Metasploit is a widely used penetration testing tool that makes hacking way easier than it used to be. It has become an indispensable tool for both the red team and the blue team. Hello everyone, come back again with a new video. In this video, I am going to explore how to use Metasploit, a generation testing platform for developing and launching exploits. In this video, our agenda will look like these. We can find the agenda from my playlist with their timing. Before we proceed further, make sure you have already subscribed to my YouTube channel. If you have not yet done, then click on subscribe button now, and press the bell icon to stay tuned with us. The Metasploit-Framework is a solid foundation that you can build on for penetration testing. You can also customize it according to your needs. It is considered by the community of ethical hackers as one of the most complete collections of exploits. And the Kali Linux makers believe that Metasploit is one of the most useful security auditing tools freely available to security professionals. It was first developed by H.D. Moore in 2001 using the Perl language, and later, it was completely rewritten in Ruby, and the company Rapid7 acquired it. Metasploit gives you an awesome working environment. From web vulnerability plugins to network information gathering, and from an extensive exploit development environment to commercial-grade exploits, you will hardly find any tool parallel to Metasploit. Install and launch Metasploitable. Starts from Linux. Let's get started. Metasploit comes pre-installed with Kali Linux. If you want to launch Metasploit, navigate the application menu and navigate to the exploitation tool and click on Metasploit-Framework. It will take time to get started. Now you see, the MSFconsole will look like. Installing Metasploit on Windows. Metasploit-Framework can be easily installed on a Windows-based operating system. However, Windows is usually not the platform of choice for deploying the Metasploit-Framework, the reason being that many of the supporting tools and utilities are not available for the Windows platform. Hence, it's strongly recommended to install the Metasploit-Framework on the Linux platform. The following are the steps for the Metasploit-Framework installation on Windows. Download the latest Metasploit from this website, link is in my description box. Open the downloaded installer. Click Next. Accept the license agreement. Select the location where you wish to install the Metasploit framework. Click on Install to proceed further. The Metasploit installer progresses by copying the required files to the destination folder. Click on Finish to complete the Metasploit framework installation. Now that the installation is complete, let's try to access the Metasploit framework through the command line interface. Navigate to the folder or path where you installed the Metasploit framework. Open bin path. In here type command. Type MSFconsole.bat and hit enter. You should be able to see the following. You should be able to see the following. The Windows installer may take quite a while to complete as it contains installers for Cygwin, Ruby, Subversion, VNC Viewer, WinVI, Nmap, WinCap, and other required packages. I always prefer you not to install Metasploit on Windows because it takes a huge amount of memory. Using the Metasploit console to launch exploits. Our first Metasploit demo involves exploiting the MS08-067 Windows XP vulnerability that led to the Configure superworm of late 2008 early 2009. We'll use Metasploit to get a remote command shell running on the unpatched Windows XP machine. Metasploit can pair any Windows exploit with any Windows payload. So we can choose the MS08-067 vulnerability to open a command shell, create an administrator, start a remote VNC session, or do a bunch of other stuff. So let's get started. Now launch Metasploitable. This process may take time, so wait for a while. The interesting commands to perform an attack are show, info, and use. You'll find all the other commands by typing help. There is a huge amount of command that can be used to perform exploitation. I have no time to tell you. So take your own time to read and run these commands to know their usage. Now let me launch Windows XP from my VirtualBox. Why Windows XP? As per my knowledge, Windows XP contains lots of vulnerability, which means we will perform many attacks compared to today's Windows operating system. I think you all not have Windows XP running on your virtual machine. I will try to available it on my website. The link is in my description box. To launch an MS08-067 exploit, our first task will be to find the name of the exploits. We can use the search command to do so. Okay, let me run search MS08-067. There it is. The Metasploit name for this exploit is MS08-067 Net API. This is the path address where the module is. We'll use that exploit and then go looking for all the options needed to make the exploit work. Now let me copy the path address. Now here type use and paste the path of the exploit. Notice that the prompt changes to enter exploit mode when you use an exploit module. Any options or variables you set while configuring this exploit will be retained so that you don't have to reset the options every time you run it. You can get back to the original launch state at the main console by issuing the back command. Different exploits have different options. Let me check what options needed to be set to make the Net API exploit work. To do this, just type show options. This exploit requires a target address, the port number on which SMB, server message block, listens, and the name of the pipe exposing this functionality. No need to set the port number and SMB pipe again, as they are already set to default. Now we have to set the remote host. To set the remote host, just type set our host and then the target IP address. Let me check my Windows XP IP address. Open command prompt and then type ipconfig command. Now hit enter. As you can see, the syntax to set an option is as follows. The our host is the option name and the target IP address is the option. Note that earlier versions of Metasploit were particular about the case of the option name and option, so examples in this chapter always use uppercase if the option is listed in uppercase. With the exploit module set, we next need to set the payload. Then what is a payload? The payload is the action that happens after the vulnerability is exploited. It's like choosing how you want to interact with the compromised machine if the vulnerability is triggered successfully. For this first example, let's use a payload that simply opens a command shell listing on a TCP port. Let me find the appropriate payloads by using the show payloads command. In typing gratuitous Metasploit style, there are several payloads that provide a Windows command shell. Some open a listener on the host, some cause the host to phone home to the attacking workstation, some use IPv6, some set up the command shell in one network round trip, inline, while others utilize multiple round trips, staged. One even connects back to the attacker tunneled over DNS. As this Windows XP target virtual machine does not have a firewall enabled, so we'll use a simple Windows/shell/bind TCP exploit. If the target were running a firewall, we might instead choose a payload that would cause the compromised workstation to connect back to the attacker, reverse. To set a payload, just run set, then payload in uppercase, and paste the path of the payload. Always remember, each payload has its own requirement. Now let me check the options. No need to change anything else. By default, this exploit will open a listener on TCP port 4444, allowing us to connect for the command shell. Let's attempt the exploit. It worked. We can verify the connection by issuing the netstat command from the Windows XP machine console, looking for established connections on port 4444. Referring back to the Metasploit output, the exploit attempt originated from 192.168.43.71:35307, matching the output we see in netstat. Let's try a different payload. Press Ctrl+C, and then type Y to put this session into the background. Now let me set the payload to Windows/shell/reverse TCP, the reverse shell that we discovered. The reverse TCP is used if the target were running a firewall. This payload requires an additional option, lhost. The victim needs to know to which host to connect when the exploit is successful. But on the latest Metasploit version, no need to set the lhost, as it already set. Notice that this is session 2. Press Ctrl+Z and type Y again to put the session in the background and go back to Metasploit prompt. Now I have 2 sessions running in the background. To get the list of all active sessions, just type sessions and hit enter. It's easy to bounce back and forth between these 2 sessions. Just use the session -i and then type session ID. If you don't get a prompt immediately, try pressing enter. Now we are in. Let me again push back to the background. There is an interesting payload listed on this list, that is VNC inject. If you don't know how to perform this payload, follow my steps. First of all, let me copy a payload. Now you already know how to use it. Okay, let me check the option for this payload. This payload required to set auto VNC, lport, rhost, VNC host, and many more. Keep them as they are. Now let me attempt the exploit. Now here, look at the screen. A pop-up screen appears on my desktop. As here you see the Windows XP is on sleep mode. If you try to wake up the screen, you can't do it, as the view only set to true. Here, look at both screens. When I do any actions on Windows XP, the reflection appears on my Kali machine. Okay, let's change the view only to false. Do the same things that I did a few times before. Now let me set the view only mode to false. Now again attempt exploit. Now, I can do anything else with my Windows XP. I can open or close any application, or turn off the PC, and many more things. You now know the most important Metasploit-Console commands and understand the basic exploit launching process. Now you know what to do next and how to manage exploitation. Run sessions to check the existing sessions. Now go back to the original launch state and clear the screen. Next, we'll explore other ways to use Metasploit in the penetration testing process. Exploiting client-side vulnerabilities with Metasploit. Then what are client-side vulnerabilities? Client-side vulnerabilities are vulnerabilities in client software such as web browsers, email applications, and media players. The idea is to lure a victim to a malicious website or to trick him into opening a malicious file or email. When the victim interacts with attacker-controlled content, the attacker presents data that triggers a vulnerability in the client-side application parsing the content. One nice thing, from an attacker's point of view, is that connections are initiated by the victim and sail right through the firewall. Metasploit includes many exploits for browser-based vulnerabilities and can act as a rogue web server to host those vulnerabilities. In this next example, we'll use Metasploit to host an exploit for MS-10-002. To know more about this, read it from Microsoft's official website. To launch an MS-10-002 exploit, we'll first need to find the Metasploit name for this exploit. So, we can use the search command to do so. The Metasploit name for this exploit is MS-10-002 Aurora. Now you all know what to do next. Yes, I have to use this exploit. So run, use command along with the path of the exploit, or you can run with the ID, in my case it is 0. Now let me set a payload. Now we check options for this exploit, run show options. Metasploit's browser-based vulnerabilities have an additional required option, server host, and URI path. Server host is your listening host. Now run the following command to set the server host. Metasploit will act as a web server, so the URI path is the rest of the URL to which you will be luring your victim. A good link for that kind of attack might look like this. In that case, you would want to set the URI path to un.htm. For this example, we will leave the URI path set to the default, to /. Now run exploit. Metasploit is now waiting for any incoming connection on port 8080. When an HTTP connection comes in on that channel, Metasploit will present an exploit for MS-10-002 with a Meterpreter payload instructing Internet Explorer to initiate a connection back to server IP address on the destination port 8080. Let's see what happens when a workstation missing Microsoft Security Update MS-10-002 visits the malicious webpage and clicks through the prompts. I just have to send this link to the target machine. Aha! We have our first victim. Verify the session established or not, using the sessions command. Now run sessions-i in the session ID to get the shell. Pressing Ctrl+Z will return you from the session back to the Metasploit console prompt. Let's simulate a second incoming connection. You already have learned how to do it. First of all, we have to set a payload. As our session 1 is bonded with reverse TCP, set the payload as a direct connection. Now check for options, if any change is needed. Now let me change the URI path to un.htm. Now run for exploit. Now you know what to do next. Send the link to the target Windows XP machine. Here on my MSFconsole, you see a second session established. You can find the established connection using the sessions command. The jobs command will list the exploit jobs you currently have active. Currently, the active job is MS-10-002 Aurora with bind TCP payload. With 2 active sessions, let's kill our exploit. Now run jobs-k to stop all jobs, or you can say it is a server. Exploiting client-side vulnerabilities by using Metasploit's built-in web server will allow you to attack workstations protected by a firewall. Let's continue exploring Metasploit by looking at other ways to use the framework. Penetration testing with Metasploit's Meterpreter. Having a command prompt is great. However, often it would be convenient to have more flexibility after you've compromised a host. And in some situations, you need to be so sneaky that even creating a new process on a host might be too much noise. That's where the Meterpreter payload shines. The Metasploit Meterpreter is a command interpreter payload that is injected into the memory of the exploited process and provides extensive and extendable features to the attacker. This payload never actually hits the disk on the victim host. Everything is injected into process memory, with no additional process created. It also provides a consistent feature set no matter which platform is being exploited. The Meterpreter is even extensible, allowing you to load new features on the fly by uploading DLLs to the target system's memory. To introduce the Meterpreter, we'll reuse the MS-10-022 browser-based exploit with the Meterpreter payload rather than the reverse shell payload. Now check for options, if any change is needed. Now run for exploit. Now you know what to do next. Send the link to the target Windows XP machine. The exploit worked again. Let's check our session listing. We now have 2 command shells from previous examples and 1 new Meterpreter session. Let's interact with the Meterpreter session. As here you see, I got the Meterpreter session. The help command will list all the built-in Meterpreter commands. The entire command list would fill several pages, but here are some of the highlights. Let's start with the PS and migrate commands. Remember that the Meterpreter payload typically runs within the process that has been exploited. Meterpreter paired with the MS-10-002 is a bit of a special case. So as soon as the user closes that web browser, the session is gone. In the case of these client-side exploits especially, you'll want to move the Meterpreter out of the client-side application's process space and into a process that will be around longer. A good target is the user's Explorer.exe process. Explorer.exe is the process that manages the desktop and shell, so as long as the user is logged in, Explorer.exe should remain alive. In the following example, we'll use the PS command to list all running processes and the migrate command to migrate the Meterpreter over to Explorer.exe. First of all, let me run the PS command. As here you see, the Explorer.exe is running at PID address 1484. Now let me run migrate command along with the PID address. As here you see, the migration completed successfully. Now find the PID address using the getPID command. Run getUID command to find the username. Great, now our session is less likely to be terminated by a suspicious user. When pen testing, your goals will often be to elevate privileges, establish a stronger foothold, and expand access to other machines. In this demo example, so far we have a Meterpreter session running as TS1B7F08B5B4BA/TS. This local workstation account is better than nothing, but it won't allow us to expand access to other machines. There are few other ways to explore the Meterpreter session. Using Meterpreter, you can log keystrokes, or run code as a different logon user, or use Meterpreter's #dump command in Metasploit's psexec command to log in using a shared password. I cannot explore all these here. If you want to learn more about Meterpreter, raise your hand and write me yes in my comments section. Automating and scripting Metasploit. The examples we have shown so far have all required a human at the keyboard to launch the exploit and, similarly, a human typing in each post-exploitation command. On larger scale penetration test engagements, that would, at best, be monotonous or worse, cause you to miss exploitation opportunities. Because you were not available to immediately type in the necessary commands to capture the session. Thankfully, Metasploit offers functionality to automate post-exploitation and even build your own scripts to run one on each compromised session. Let's start with an example of creating an automating script and run it. From here we have to generate an automating script. So from here open a new terminal window. I want the script live on my desktop, so let me change the directory. OK, next is to push the all used commands to gain access to Windows XP. Now run nano along with file name. Always remember the file name must be in .rc format. Push here all used commands to exploit client-side vulnerabilities. Save it by pressing Ctrl+X and hit enter. To run the script use the resource command, and then paste the file. As here you see it automatically runs each of the commands. Otherwise, you can run it directly from the new terminal window using MSFconsole-R in the file. You can find all the available Meterpreter scripts in your Metasploit installation under User, Share, Metasploit-Framework. Here click on Scripts and then click on Meterpreter. These all scripts are written in Ruby. Let me open a script just to show you all what is in a script. Going further with Metasploit, there are few other ways to exploit a device. The most simple and easiest step is MSFvenom. There are few other videos that will explore the Metasploit framework. Watch these videos from my blog, the link is in my description. It's time to say goodbye. If you have any doubts and queries about my videos, write me below in my comments section.